Good morning. Actually, good afternoon. Depends when you're watching this, I guess. But today we're going to cover 8.4, and this is the 8.4.8.5 combined notes. It's one section. I pulled it all together, and we'll cover this over a couple of days. Today we'll start with the 8.4 part of this. All right, so make sure you have out the 8.4 notes, and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just simplifying rational expressions. A lot of what we're going to do today is just factoring, a lot of factoring and then canceling out. So I have three problems here. I have this first one, second one, and the third one. And we're going to do this first one, and then we'll come over here and do the second and third. So it says factor the numerator and the denominator. Well, I have a over c, or a times c, over a over b. And there really isn't anything I can factor out of that. It is two products, A, C, A, B. So that one is essentially done. Then step two, it says cancel out anything that is both in the numerator and the denominator. Well, in this case, my A's can cancel. It just becomes A over A, which is 1. And I'm left with C over B. All right, so in essence, this is what we're doing today. We're going to make products by factoring, and then we're going to cancel out what we can. So let's take a look at the next problem. I have 4 times x plus 3 in the numerator, and in the denominator I can factor this, and I can factor it to x plus 3, x minus 5. And now you'll notice these are all products in the numerator. There's no addition or subtraction. In all products, no addition and subtraction. Yes, there is inside of the binomials, there is addition and subtraction, but these are products here. So I can cancel out x plus 3 and x plus 3 because that is just 1, and we will simply be left with 4 over x minus 5. Parentheses are not important there, but you can leave them if you'd like. Okay, moving on to the next one. I need to factor out everything I can factor out. So the numerator is going to become x plus 3 times x minus 5 divided by, and this is a difference of perfect squares. 9 is a perfect squared, x squared is a perfect square. So I can factor this to become x plus 3 times x minus 3. Now, I look to see what I can cancel. I can cancel out the x plus 3's, and I will be left with x minus 5 over x minus 3. Great. So this is how we simplify. We'll do a handful of these problems in this packet, and I will answer questions that you have for me on Wednesday on this. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, this is multiplying rational expressions. There's really 5 steps. There's this third step in there that you see on your notes that may or may not be needed. Oftentimes, you won't need to factor out a -1, but I will show you how to do that in the last problem. So this first problem, it says A over B times C over D. So first thing we're going to do is factor out numerators and denominators. There's nothing to factor out there, so I can just go ahead and write this down. All right, let's see, A over B times C over D. And now it says multiply the numerators and the denominator. Well, multiplying fractions is the easiest. I just multiply the numerator straight across. It is A times C. And then same thing for the denominator, straight across, B times D. There's nothing else I can simplify on this, so I'm going to go to the next slide real quick. And it says change the signs, divide out any common factors, and simplify. There's nothing I need to do for this one, so really in the end this is just A times C over B times D. All right, so I'm going to go back a page. Here we go. So moving on to the next problem. It says, first thing, factor out anything in the numerator and denominator. There's nothing I can factor out. I'm just going to copy the problem down. 5x squared times, let's do it this way, 5x squared, 6xy squared times 6xy to the third over 10xy to the third. Now it says multiply the numerators and denominators, which I will do. It is simply 5 times 6. These are the numbers or the coefficients in here. I'm going to multiply those, so I get 30. X squared times x to the first. It's going to give me an x to the third. And I simply have a y to the third. Now for my denominator, I have 6 times 10, which is 60. I have x times x, which is x squared. And I have y squared times y to the third, which is y to the fifth. I'm going to change slides. So in this case, there's nothing I need to factor out for this -1. We'll see that in the next problem. And it says divide out common factors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy down what I had. 30 x to the third, y to the third, over 60 x squared, y to the fifth. Now I need to divide out any common factors. I know that 30 over 60 is really just 1/2. And then if you feel like you need to, you can bring this, change this color here. You can bring this y squared up and this, or this x squared up and this y to the fifth up, and you can make them negative exponents, or you can just cancel this out. I know that the numerator is going to have an x to the first power, because there is an x squared and an x to the third. And the denominator is going to have a y squared, because this is larger. So I can write it like this. And that would be the final for this one. If you wanted to, I guess you could write it like this. It would look maybe a little better, something like that. All right, now let's go back up to the one here. Make some space, because I'm going to need it, I believe. All right, numerators and denominators. My move is to factor out first. So in this first numerator, I'm going to factor out a 3 and an x, and I'll be left with 1 minus x. In the other numerator, I will factor that, and I will have an x minus 4 times x plus 5. All right, now denominator over here, x minus 1, x plus 5, and the numerator of the other side is just 3x. Now it says multiply, so I'm going to just multiply everything out, and when I do this, I'm going to look to see if I can put factors over factors. So for example, this 3x and this 3x, I'm going to put those over each other in this fraction, just so I can see what's canceling. So I have this one big fraction bar, 3x over 3x. I'm going to have this x plus 5 here, and another x plus 5, which is in the denominator. Put that here. And then in the numerator, I'm left with 1. Clean that up a little bit. I'm left with parenthesis 1 minus x, x minus 4. and then I have an x minus 1. I'm going to go to the next slide and then write this out for you before. So copy this down. If you don't get it, you'll be able to capture it on the next slide. All right, so now it says we need to factor out a negative 1. And that's going to change the signs. I know that this 3x over 3x is going to cancel, and this x plus 5 over x plus 5 is going to cancel. But this 1 minus x and this x minus 1, I really feel like they might be able to cancel. So let's take a look at what we can do with this. I'm going to go ahead and capture this and just put it over here to work it. I could rewrite that as minus x plus 1. And then if I factor out a negative 1, it will leave me with x minus 1. So in this numerator here, this 1 minus x could be rewritten as minus 1 x minus 1. And the reason I like that is because it'll cancel with this x minus 1. And then I have the x minus 4 left over. So let's go ahead and write this whole thing out. I'm going to pause it for this so you can capture. Go ahead and write this out with this in it. And then, all right, I'm back now. So you should have this. All I've done is replace this 1 minus x with negative 1 x minus 1. That is right here. And now I can go ahead and do all of my cancellations. I know that this is going to cancel with this is going to cancel with this, and that's going to cancel with that. I'm now left with negative 1 x minus 4, which I can distribute this negative 1 throughout, and I will have negative x plus 4 as the solution. All right, this is a lot of what we're going to be doing today in the work. You're going to be doing a lot of factoring and cancellation. Now, this is for multiplying. To divide, remember dividing is just multiplying fractions by the reciprocal, and that'll be our next slide. If you need to pause this, do that now so that you can capture all of this. It's a lot of writing. Okay, here we are. We're dividing fractions. In order to do this, we need to multiply by the reciprocals. So here I have a divided by b, and I want to divide it by c over d. To do so, I flip the second one, and it becomes multiplication. And it becomes d over c. And this simplifies to a, d, b, c. And now I have a multiplication problem. If I could simplify this any further, I would. Let's go to the next one and see how this goes. So I have 5x squared over y squared divided by 10x over y to the third. There is nothing for me to factor out of the numerator and denominator, so I'm simply going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. This is me now flipping it. The y cubed goes on top, the 10x goes on the bottom, and I am going to do the multiplication. It is 5 times x squared y cubed all over 10x y squared. And then I would simplify this further. And when I simplify this, I will get a 1/2 x y. I can rewrite this as xy divided by 2. All right, now we're going to go work that last problem. Take a moment and capture this if you haven't. All right, we are now going to factor the numerator and the denominator. I'm going to go over here a little bit so I have some room to work. I have x minus 2 times x plus 3 all over x times x plus 1. That is the left-hand fraction. Now the right-hand fraction, there's nothing to factor out of this, so I can just rewrite it. This is still a division problem. I haven't flipped it. Now I will flip it. X minus 2, x plus 3. Times, when I flip it, it becomes a multiplication problem, and I have x over x plus 3. Now I will rewrite these. I'm going to go to the next slide and rewrite it there so you can capture it. All right, so now I have flipped this, and to finish the multiplication off, I will write this out as x times x plus 3 times x minus 2 all over x times x plus 3 times x plus 1. And you'll notice that my x's cancel, my x plus 3's cancel, so I am left with just x minus 2 over x plus 1. All right, so this is multiplying, or simplifying, multiplying, and dividing. I would like for you now to go work on, simplifying in your packet and multiplying and dividing in your packet. Do problems 1 through 15 in class today and 1 through 17 in class today. And your homework for both of these is the letters. So it's A through something for both of those. And talk to your neighbors, compare your answers, and we can cover anything you get stuck with tomorrow in class. Thanks.